All right, gang, we're about to begin Unit 1. And Unit 1 is really captured in two chapters of your book. We're looking primarily at chapters 16 and 17, I believe. And as you think about chapter 16, it concentrates primarily on the history of the Gilded Age, the Industrial Revolution, and the settlement of the West in the late 19th century. The chapter emphasizes that as the majority of Americans became wage workers, the traditional dreams of economic economic independence became obsolete. So during the Gilded Age, it became difficult, if not impossible, for Americans to view wage labor as a temporary stop on the road to becoming an independent proprietor, if you will, or a farmer even. The Industrial Revolution, on the other hand, brought tremendous urban growth. It created a national market and made captains of industry very rich while exploiting the working class. Farming was transformed too, and the settlement of the West after the Civil War resulted in displacement of American Indians. Trying to keep their land and their freedom, the Indians fought the U.S. cavalry in a series of wars that you'll get a chance to read about, culminating at Wounded Knee. Chief Joseph successfully led his people toward Canada, hoping to escape being placed on a reservation. Although we will not read his story, it is captured in the Voices of Freedom section of the text. Voices of Freedom section of the text, if you want to read that. The chapter also discusses the politics of the Gilded Age as a period of a political stalemate, if you will, in action and the corrupt city machines. Freedom in the Gilded Age is explored looking closely at this idea, this concept of social Darwinism, the concept of the liberty of contract, and the court's participation in defining freedom, because they're going to get really involved in that, especially as we look at the 14th Amendment during this industrial age. Responding to the hardships of industrialization were the emergence of unions, the Knights of Labor, labor leader Ira Stewart, and various social critics. So we'll get a chance to explore that as well. Chapter 16 concludes with the Haymarket Affair and Henry George's run for New York City mayor, indicating that labor was attempting to become a permanent political force by the end of the Gilded Age. So that's what chapter 16 looks like. Chapter 17, on the other hand, concentrates on the limitations of freedom, including those affecting farmers, immigrants, blacks, women's, political, colonial subjects, if you will. It even the chapter opens with the Homestead Strike, and we'll talk a little bit about that, which demonstrated that neither a powerful union nor public opinion could influence the conduct of the largest corporations, if you will. Farmers, we're going to see this theme emerging. Farmers also illustrated that not everyone benefited from the prosperity of the Industrial Revolution. And you would think farmers would, but we're going to talk about why and how they didn't. The chapter then explores the New South. All right, this idea of the New South. After Reconstruction, blacks faced this type of disenfranchisement. There's the threat of the lynching and Jim Crow laws sanctioned by the Supreme Court's decision in Plessy versus Ferguson. We get a chance to look at this debate between Du Bois and Washington on the best way to do it. New immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe also faced this growing restrictions on their freedom in the face of this new nativism, if you will. The Chinese were singled out and permanently excluded from immigrating to America in 1882 with the Chinese Exclusion Act, and they had to fight through the court system to gain a few liberties. So looking at all of that, we're going to again take a look at Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois and their different approaches to dealing with those limitations of freedom put on specifically the African Americans. Washington preached a policy of accommodation and vocational education, and we're going to get a chance to explore some of the other types of angles at which people took. So ultimately, we'll use both of these chapters and gather evidence to offer an answer to the essential question: to what extent did government policies of the industrial age, and we're talking about Jim Crow, pro-big business, laissez-faire policies, expand or contract the rights, opportunities, and responsibilities of the American people? And to what extent was this the proper role for the government to play in the economy and the lives of the citizens? So keep those things in mind. Keep that question in mind as you're really working through your reading, because we're going to keep coming back to that, because ultimately, remember, the history is an argument, and we're going to use this evidence to ultimately do just that. So if you have any questions about what the reading's supposed to do and what role it's playing, please come and see me. If you get stuck on something, again, remember to write those questions down and we'll take care of that. But that's the reading of the unit in a nutshell. We'll bring in some primary sources and some additional resources, but from the text, that's what you can expect. If you have any questions, let me know.